go ahead and get going. We have a full night tonight. So let me just run down really quickly how this is going to work. We are very fortunate to have candidates both for the mayor race and city council that showed up, and we really appreciate that. But we're going to try and get that done first. And they are welcome to stick around, but I told them we don't expect them to because we have to do all of our business, and that may go fairly late. We are filming, which is good, so we can get this out to the wider group. So the way the candidates will work, in just a second, I'll give a brief introduction before we get there. But we'll have the candidates come up. I think we'll do a reverse alphabetical order so we can, be creative out here. And they each have 3 minutes. There's no questions, no answers. And we're just going to kind of go rapid fire through that. So they all have a moment to address us. And we'll go with mayor candidates first, those that are here, and then city council candidates. So before we do that, I have a couple of slides. This is our annual meeting. Our third one since we have reinvigorated ourselves. So our agenda, as I just said, we're going to discuss the city elections. Hey, Neil, can you get those forward lights? So I will just, from there we'll go to briefly discuss our neighborhood plan, treasury report, our board elections, which we have to do, any other issues, quick update on prominence, and then discussions. Thank you, Neil. So our elections are coming up, and this is so important for everyone in the city. Those of us out here, especially important for some of us. This is the first chance we'll have to vote for mayor or some of the city council seats, and so we need to embrace that and go out and vote. And I cannot overemphasize how critical that is for everyone in the city. Out here, we don't do too well. So we have the propositions 1 and 2 as well. You may have heard about those. Those are addressing whether or not we as citizens have the ability to vote on major library and or stadium projects. Those are 2 separate ballot initiatives. The first, Proposition 1, is addressing any library over $25 million. A yes on that would create an ordinance that would then require a vote of libraries of that class. Likewise for the stadium, although the threshold is lower, $5 million, those both just address public funding. The mayoral elections, we have 6 candidates, which is really great. And city council elections, we have an amazing number of energetic, smart, and motivated people running for city council. For seat 1, we have 6 candidates. For seat 3, we have 3 candidates. And for seat 5, we have 2 candidates. And I believe most of those people are here tonight. Yeah. So this is again why we need to vote. I have done everything I can to have everybody in the city, but especially those of us out in the Pale area. The Pale area of the city is those of us, raise our hands, who do not vote very well. We see the lowest out there in West Boise is 8%. Now these are municipal elections. These are city elections. People across the city do relatively well. We could always do better. Voting for general elections, when there's a presidential or congressional elections on the even years. But odd years, well, we have a lot of work to do. And clearly this is kind of a chicken and egg thing. As we are, become part of the city, we may not know who to vote for. We may not really be aware of municipal elections at all. I mean, I think blissfully back to 4 years ago or so, where I couldn't rattle off the city council, people's names, right? But most of us in this room probably can now, and that's a good thing. And it will be a better thing if we vote, and even if we don't vote for people that I might think are great. If we just simply vote, we will have more influence moving forward. So you see the dark colors there, you know, around Warm Springs, you know, over 40% in the last municipal election. So that is essential. It's not just us. It's all across West Boise, Southwest Boise, South Boise, the bench. Bench is starting to do better. But clearly, just pass the word. Put this on your refrigerator, you know, and just in the next 3 weeks, just get people out to vote. So with that in mind, we might as well go ahead and start calling our candidates up. Let's see here.
And Richard, remind them about 3 minutes and I'll be flashing.
Oh, yes.
30 seconds.
So Dennis here is going to be the timekeeper, and he'll give you a little warning when you have 30 seconds left. And if we can figure it out for mayoral candidate, who is the last person, let's see, would that be Wayne Ritchie? I don't think he's here. I think he's traveling. Who can help me figure out who the next person is on the... Courtney Nielsen? Courtney Nielsen, is she here? All right. Well, her time is up. And...
I think that's me then, right?
Okay, Lauren McLean is up. She is here. And you can have the microphone and stand to the side if you like so you don't get blinded. Yeah. Okay. So we really do appreciate all the candidates. And Ricky, you got it rolling?
Yep.
Yeah. Anybody else who has a camera and on their phone, it's always good to have a little redundant videotaping because it's surprising how often there's an error.
You heard me.
Do you want to turn the lights on for this part?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Turn the lights on.
Thank you.
So Lauren, I'll raise this when you're...
Great. 3 minutes is longer than I've had for a long time, so I doubt that I'll take it off.
Yeah, we have childproof lights.
I'll sit down there.
Yeah, you can close this. Okay, now I'll probably never get started again. But
If everybody's happy with me, I'm happy to start.
Yes.
You want me to start?
Let's see. This is very tricky. Karen has more experience than I do. You are on video. So
So where's the video? So I'm doing funny things. All right, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us tonight. Really appreciate that you've opened your annual meeting to the candidates, and congrats on your 3rd annual meeting. I'm Lauren McLean. I'm currently the president of the City Council. I've met so many of you over the last year as we've talked about what's happening in this neighborhood and running for mayor now. Appreciate the chance to be here. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me that you might not have heard at one of my listening sessions where I've met so many of you over time, and then what I want to work on and why I think now is the time. And normally I take questions, so it's weird to just talk at people. So, but that's what we're doing tonight. My husband and I moved here when we were just out of college. We met in high school, got married right after we graduated, and got incredibly lucky and found Boise when we thought we were going to move to Seattle. And I always say I never forget the first time I saw this place. And we were landing, and I saw the foothills, and I didn't know anything about Boise when we came to visit. And I just fell madly in love with the place, especially when I actually took off and ran along the river and then up into the hills, and wanted to be here. And got so lucky that Scott got a job, and we moved here 3 months later. We have a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old, and this has been our home. And this spring, I started and met many of you actually at one of my first listening sessions, and started going through the community because I sensed that people wanted to talk about where we're headed. Because like when I moved here 21 years ago, we were at this big growth moment, now we're having another one. And when Scott and I moved here, we were able to buy the house, start to build a life, find opportunity here in ways that now I hear so many people saying they're afraid their kids can't, or they themselves can't. And so when we think about where our city is headed, We're a new city. We're so different than we were 16 years ago, and I really believe that we need a new sense of urgency and a new approach, a new leadership style to tackle the biggest issues of our day: affordable housing, a regional transportation system, and really growing our economy with strategic jobs that'll pay us what we need to be paid to be able to live in the city in which we work and love so dearly. And so that's really what my priorities are, working on those three issues, working in new ways too to engage the public, to be a little bit more accessible and transparent than what we see right now out of the mayor's office. And so I've committed to posting my schedule online so people can know who I'm meeting and what I'm up to continue the listening sessions that have really helped me build my platform and where I've met so many of you quarterly, and then to have the conversations we need to have to talk about how we head into the future, while keeping what we all love about this place as intact as we can, from a connection of people and the neighborhoods in which we live, and the place that we love so much. So I hope to earn your vote on November 5th. Thank you all very much.
Okay, up next we have Adriel Martinez. Is he here tonight? No, he is not here. We will go on to the next one, which is Brent Coles. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you for inviting us here tonight. My name is Brent Coles. I live in the Northwest neighborhood. Some of you have met me as I've gone door to door. Also handed out flyers inviting you to the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. I testified at every one of those meetings in opposition to the high-density project that we see having been approved in our neighborhood. I understand and I believe that this election is about ideas and priorities. Is it good for us? Is it good for the city? Is it good for all of us to have a city take 3%, increase taxes year after year after year, and build a $100 million library? Or would it be better for us to not contribute to those high increases in property taxes when we have homeowners struggling to stay in their homes? Would it be better for us to balance our budget, not contribute to those increases, and pass on those savings to the homeowners? It's about ideas and about priorities. Are we satisfied with having at least 54 police officers short in our community? They're struggling. They're out there. They're working hard. They're great officers. But we're way behind in keeping up with the number of police officers we need in our community. Are we satisfied with not having a fire station out here in Northwest Boise? Years ago it was planned. We were annexed years ago. Are we satisfied that no construction has taken place for us out here? And there are other areas of Boise that have been annexed and are without their own fire station. Are we satisfied that parks are built but they're incomplete, like our park? I'm not satisfied with that. I believe it's time for a change. It's time for us to reprioritize. It's time for us to be involved in the prioritization of how we spend the tax dollars in our community. It's time for some common sense solutions too. How satisfied are we to be out there in the traffic congestion when we don't have the infrastructure to take on all this high density development that is going on? The project that was approved here was very high density. There's no buses. There's very little opportunity for cars to get around. The intersection that we know of at Glenwood and State Street is at level service F, which is failing, right? And instead, we get this approval for a high-density project out here where almost every car is going to go through that intersection. It's time for us to work together. I humbly ask for your vote. It's an opportunity for us on November 5th to have a change, to change direction, and for us to be involved in the decision-making process. Thank you very much.
People know how to do it in 3 minutes.
Yes, they do. They're quite good. So next we have Dave Beater. Peter is not here. And then we have Rebecca Arnold.
For letting us crash your annual meeting and talk tonight. I'm Rebecca Arnold. I'm running for mayor. I am very concerned about the direction the city has been taking over the last few years, and I think we're headed down a path that's just going to destroy the quality of life that we all love. I'm very concerned about the lack of transparency at City Hall. There are way too many things that are being talked about without citizen involvement. And what I'd like to do is take those meetings out into the community, have workshops and council meetings in the various neighborhoods to give people an opportunity to participate early in the process and often. Somebody said the other day, well, it's not possible to do that. Well, of course it is. It's just a matter of logistics and a matter of getting it done. It would have been nice if the project that was approved, if the hearing for that had been held out here where more people could attend. It was in downtown Boise at night, no parking and construction going on. That's not convenient for our citizens. The other thing, one of the other things that I'm very concerned about is the out of control property taxes. And affordable housing seems to be the buzzword of the day, but there seems to be a disconnect with our city council. They don't seem to understand that part of affordability is being able to keep your home and not being forced to sell it because your property taxes are too high. And the city of Boise seems to believe that they are entitled to take the maximum amount in property tax increases every single year. And that's how they've come to accumulate this $50 million slush fund for the library. Those are our dollars, and they should have been left in our pockets instead of stockpiled for vanity projects. Which leads me to another item I'm quite concerned about, the out of control spending. It's vanity projects that really don't benefit our citizens. The new proposed library is a classic example of that. $100 million, $11 million contract with an out-of-the-country architect who designed something that's very grandiose, and it doesn't fit with our lifestyles and our communities. I think we should cancel that contract, cancel that project, and start over. Figure out, do we really need to build a new library? And if we do, then have it designed by a local architect who understands our community values, understands that we value historic things like the Log Cabin Literary Center. Okay, looks like I'm out of time. I do publish my cell phone number and have for years. If you'd like to call me, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we will do seat number 5 first, so you guys can actually speak sooner rather than later. And I'm going to say Lombard Bloom starts with a B. So Brady Fuller is up first.
All right, well, thank you all for letting us come and join you guys tonight. My name is Brady Fuller. I am running for Boise City Council, seat 5, and I wanted to start off by just telling you a little bit about who I am, especially as a first-time candidate. So, I was born at St. Luke's in downtown Boise, and I've had the good fortune of watching our city grow and evolve and transform over the years into the city that we have today. I went away for a while. I went to the University of Idaho, where I studied political science and international studies. And then I served in the United States Peace Corps. I served in a rural village, kind of where the jungle and the rice fields come together, in western Cambodia, and I served as an English teacher there for 2 years. After returning home, I was appointed by Governor Little to serve on his commission on service and volunteerism. We oversee the AmeriCorps program for the state of Idaho, but we also help local Idahoans get involved in their own communities to serve one another. I too wanted to come back and serve the city that shaped me into the person that I am today, and that's when I decided to run for city council. Now, as a first-time candidate, as a 26-year-old, I knew I was going to have to do this in a grassroots way, one where I go around neighborhoods having genuine conversations with everyday people about what they want to see going forward. I have knocked on over 1,000 doors from Eagle Road to Hill Road, Park Center to South Cole to really get an idea of the different neighborhoods and what they've got going on and what concerns they have. There are two things that seem to come up every time, and it doesn't matter what neighborhood I'm in, and it doesn't matter who answers the door. The first is growth. People are concerned about growth, transportation, housing, protecting our open spaces. They want to make sure that we are responsibly growing, not just as a city, but as a valley. We've got to have a conversation as a region on how we can move forward together. We've got to build stronger relationships with the ACHD, the other leaders across our valley, to really make sure we are all moving forward together. The second thing, and again, it doesn't matter if the person that answers the door is 18 years old or 94 years old. People recognize the value in bringing new voices to the table. They recognize that part of progress is allowing that torch to be passed to a new leader. I truly believe in term limits. I truly believe that 2 terms for city council and for mayor, to give someone up to 8 years to come in, to serve our city, to move it in the right direction, and then to allow another individual to come in and to continue serving our city. You know, more than experience, I think people want a leader that's willing to listen, a leader that's willing to learn, but most importantly, a leader that is willing to work with others for the sake of moving us all forward. And that's exactly what I plan to do as your city council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Clegg is next. Thank you.
Well, like everyone else, I really thank you for having us tonight. Many of you know me. I've seen lots of you at City Hall during the hearings that we've had on the issues in this neighborhood. I don't know if many of you know much about me though, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. I grew up in Boise. I went to school here, went to Boise State, played basketball there in the 70s. We actually went to the Sweet 16 in 1975, so a little bit of crazy background. But after I grew up, my husband and I bought a house, thankfully. We were able to get into a house and we raised our 5 children there. As I was raising those kids, I got involved in my neighborhood association, ended up as the president of that association, and ended up helping save Hulls Gulch, helping preserve the very first of the jewel preserves in the foothills that kind of set the stage for the rest of the foothills preservation. After also volunteering at the city, helping write some ordinances, doing some other things, I was able to run for city council and I won. One of the first things that happened after I won was that we got the first residential historic districts in Boise Pass. I had started working on that before I got elected, and it was so thrilling to be able to vote for it after that election. Since then, I've done a lot of other things. I guess what I would tell you is that I am an agent of change, and I don't think that you can say that somebody can't be an agent of change just because they've been doing change for a while. I've been doing it all my life. I've been successful at it. I think I've brought some really good changes to the city of Boise, including Whitewater Boulevard. Talking about collaboration with ACHD, I'm the person who led the collaborative effort to make that a boulevard with separated sidewalks and bike lanes and all the things you see on it today instead of just a normal 5-lane arterial. I've also worked hard to get bus rapid transit planning for State Street, and in that work I've managed to get money added to our transit system so that we have 15-minute headways at peak hour, and we have service until 9:30 at night on State Street. So the service that we do have is service that I've worked hard to improve. Quickly, a little bit about things in your neighborhood. I know that traffic on Hill Road is a big issue. I promised during the hearing on prominence to do something, to explore something about that. I've asked ACHD to do a study on the truck traffic to see if there's trucks we can take off Hill Road. I've also begun discussions about whether or not we could do a circuitous connection at Old Horseshoe Bend Road, somewhat like at Harris Ranch, to see if that could help with the traffic. And then additionally, the city of Boise is moving to deconstruction landfill out south of the airport, which could take some of the landfill traffic off. So hopefully those are things that will help you. Thanks so much for having us. I have to go pick up my grandkids, so I'm not going to stay. Sorry about that.
Okay, seat number 3, Meredith Stead is up next. Oh, sorry. Oh, oops. We've heard there's another candidate. I guess she's just entered in this last moment.
I have.
Debbie Bloom.
Yeah.
She lives in not too far from our neighborhood. Yeah.
Yes.
I think you forgot me because I'm not prepared to speak. Like all of our other speakers are really good at it. This is one of the reasons why I decided to run for council is because of what's happening out here. My son lives out here and I live down the road from here on Hollister. So when she was talking about what's happening on Hill Road, everything that you guys have comes all the way down to town. I did ask a long time ago if the city could do an overlay for your section, and that's a no-go, even though we have other overlays in the city. But we should have that option in other parts of the city as well. But let me back up and talk about who I am. My name is Debbie Lombard Bloom, and I've lived here most of my life. I came when I was a toddler. When I talk to people, the thing that, even though I try to bring up other conversations now to see if there's more important things or something else, it always comes back to the budget and people's property taxes. So we can talk about affordable housing all we want, but people are talking about their affordable housing and how much their property taxes are now. We can do that with the budget, and that's a job and responsibility of the people on the council. Your staff and your mayor can ask for the budget that they want, but it's the council's responsibility to go through that and to actually balance the budget and reduce that so we can reduce our levy. I had a party last night at our house for some kind of affluent people because it was a donation sort of party, and I was talking about what they want to see in the valley, and I thought it was something totally different from what the rest of us want to see. I come from a service sector job, blue collar job, and their first response to me was their property taxes. And it changes their wants, but it changes the majority of our needs when we have those property tax burdens. I come from, we own a small business, so we are employers of people, and we know how difficult it is for them. We're a debt-free company, and I think we need to be mindful, and I bring that kind of mindfulness with property taxes and debt to the city. I think before we go down a road of placing that burden on not only you, but on everybody else, our children and our grandchildren, we need to be mindful of doing that.
Okay, now we're moving on to seat 5, and, or sorry, geez. Seat 3, Meredith Stead.
Hi, my name is Meredith Stead. I'm running for Boise City Council, seat 3. I've lived all over the country, and I was first introduced to Idaho when the company my brother was working for relocated here, and I had the opportunity to visit many times this really welcoming and wonderful community. And then in the winter of 2011, I was working in Lake Tahoe, and we got 800 inches of snow. So that spring I dug myself out and came for another visit to Boise, where it was one of those iconic spring weekends. It was about 75 degrees, and we rode bikes to the farmer's market and went to the Shakespeare Festival. And I knew right away that this is where I was going to put my roots down. So about 2 months later, I moved here with my husband, and I've always been somebody that builds community. So I was the marketing director at Ballet, Idaho for about 5 years, and now I work in a similar capacity for Boise Valley Economic Partnership, helping businesses make the decision to bring their jobs here for our local workforce. And I joined the Boise State Public Radio Community Advisory Board. I joined the Fundsy Board of Directors, and I joined Leadership Boise, of which I was voted by my peers to serve as their president. But still, I wanted to figure out how to have a really impactful, positive impact on my community. So I applied for the Public Works Commission and was ultimately appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I have really loved that process of working with our community to navigate through that complicated process, and I recognize many of you from those meetings. But still, I've been frustrated, probably like many of you, because we aren't always allowed to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. So Prominence is a great example. I would love to see us building first where we have the infrastructure to support development, and not where we necessarily have to put in new roads and sewer lines and power lines and fire stations, because that's what we're paying for to make that happen. And a lot of the city has that existing infrastructure to support development. So that's what I'd like to see first. And ultimately, that's why I'm running for city council. I want to make sure that we're keeping up with the infrastructure that we need, that we're protecting our natural resources, our green space and our open space, and that we're not continuing to rezone open space in the foothills to be developable. And that we're tackling some of those tough issues like affordable housing and transportation, coming into relationships with fresh eyes and really positive relationships with those other entities that we have to work with, like ACHD, Compass, and CCDC, to make sure that they are supporting Boise's long-term vision, and that our development code mirrors the comprehensive plan that we've all spent a lot of time working on to create. And that's why I'm running for city council, and I hope to earn your vote in November. My cell phone too is on my palm cards, and I'd love to hear from each of you if you have additional questions. Thanks so much.
Jimmy Halliburton is next, also for C3.
Thank you so much, Richard. My name is Jimmy Halliburton, and I'm running for Boise City Council, Seat 3. I am so excited to be here tonight for a few different reasons. One, I've kind of been annoying Richard for the last 9 months trying to get in here, and it turns out that you all have a lot going on. But one of the things that I've been doing is I've been going to every single neighborhood association in town. This is my 27th neighborhood association I've visited in the last 7 months, so I'm really excited to finally get to be here tonight. I will be sticking around for the rest of the meeting because I really do want to hear what you have going on. The other reason I'm really excited to be here is this is my home neighborhood. So I grew up in the palest of the areas right there off Old Highway 55 in a house that my grandpa built and my mom grew up in. He built it with the GI Bill. And my backyard was a dairy farm, and the other side was the Boise foothills. And I remember pretty distinctly growing up as a kid, my grandpa would be driving us on his truck on Old Hill Road, and he would go really fast. And we would go down those little loops, and it would make those butterflies in your stomach. So I've got a long history in this neighborhood, and it's home to me. The other reason I'm really excited to be here tonight is I work a lot in this neighborhood. So I work at the Boise Bicycle Project. I've been running that for 12 years now. I founded it in 2007. And one of the things that we do is we try to help people overcome transportation barriers with bicycle transportation and also access to public transportation. One of our lowest income neighborhoods happens to be the neighborhood that I grew up in on Old Highway 55. And we donate hundreds of bicycles to those kids. And we also have to make sure that they have a safe place to ride those bicycles. So we've worked with ACHD. Rebecca will tell you that I'm in there all the time. I don't always get what I want. But I still keep going, and I'm really proud of the relationships that I formed there. And we're working really hard right now to make it so that there's a bicycle lane that takes those kids all the way up to the bike park and the skate park that's up there. On my way here today, I got to ride on bicycle lanes that I worked with ACHD to help put in, the one right in front of the school here, and I got to park my bike in a bike parking area that we helped advocate for. Because we know that in order to reduce traffic, we have to give people other transportation options. And if we don't have safe places for kids to ride their bikes to school, they can't get there. I'm going to go off script just a little bit because I want to talk about...
Does that work? Yeah. All right, cool. Hey, my name is Ryan Peck. I'm running for Boise City Council, Seat 1, and I'm also a first-time candidate. I'm sorry about that. I run the Boise Rock School, which is an arts education organization where we see about 400 kids every week, help them find their passions. Boise Rock School also does outreach all over our community at places like Ada County Detention Center, St. Luke's Children's Hospital School, and we even have a program for adults over at the Boise VA. In addition to that, I also teach in the biology department at Boise State University, something I've done since 2005. I very much love biology, as does Richard. We've had some conversations about pikas, which was an animal that I studied in grad school. Do y'all know what pikas are? Yeah. You have to be somewhere cool to see a pika. You don't just run into it. Yeah. And I've also had my hand in starting a handful of other nonprofits and small businesses in Boise, that most of which continue to flourish today. I'm running for Boise City Council to advocate for our youth and to advocate for the next generation. The issues that are facing us now, affordable housing, transportation, all these things that we keep hearing about, they're hitting us hard now, and it's a squeeze. And if we don't make good choices now, it's going to hit the next generation even harder. And so from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing a lot of youth culture being pushed out in favor of what I'm going to call bar culture. We'll call it adult culture, but I'll call it what it is. And so when I look around the downtown core especially, I see what used to be an all-ages venue, now it's a brewery, etc. So as such, for me, I really want to activate more all-ages accessible cultural hubs for our kids, places where big ideas can be exchanged. When I think about Idaho and I think about Boise, I think about Albertsons, I think about Micron, these companies that, Simplot, Morrison Knudsen, these companies that are homegrown. And so from my perspective, we should be putting tools and guidance out there to take the next generation and turn them into creative entrepreneurs and help them to lead, impactful career lives, which is important to me. So if you lose your kids, your town's in big trouble. And at very best, they'll be driving in from somewhere else to work a low-wage, service-based job. But I believe in Boise, and I believe in the future, and I think we can do a whole lot better right now. So my name's Ryan Peck, Boise City Council, Seat 1. Thanks so much.
Okay, going up, Chris Bonis. I don't believe he's here. Nope. Tekla, somebody help me with saying his last name. I don't want to butcher it.
Everybody knows that.
Gabriel Michael? Pretty close? Okay. And next is, since Tekla is not here, Karen Danley.
Thank you. I was raised on a ranch. My dad was actually an optometrist and a rancher as well. How many people know big animals and have any experience with cattle? Well, I have experience with little animals like chickens all the way to horses, and I ride horses a lot, and how that symbiotic relationship with them, that you can combine those powers and put it together and have an amazing powerful team. I also have dealt with charging bulls, or my job was to keep the new mother, the new cow, away from the new calf, so my dad could check it, make sure it was healthy, and tag it. And I'll tell you what, those cows can be more mean than the bulls, quite honestly. But you learn to recognize and stand strong and not move and keep your ground. Someone asked me, why have you shown that you can stand your ground so firmly against dynamists, against problemists under Dr. Llewellyn's leadership, against the Luna laws? And I really had to think about that. And I think it's because that's how we grew up. You knew how to handle it, and you don't move. You stand your ground. So when we're being bullied by developers or some, city hall, or we're not being included, we need to stand our ground. So I'm Karen Danley, and I'm running for Boise City Council, Seat 1. I've been a teacher in Boise schools for over 20 years, and actually where I taught is like Whittier, Whitney, Taft, all the way up Valley View. Most of the Pale area is Shadow Hills and Riverglen. I taught here for 12 years. And that really gave me a sense of the diversity of demographics throughout the city. So I really think that helps me serve those populations. And then I'm also a businesswoman. I have a planned development, and this is how I know how to develop responsibly. I'm a managing partner of our family business, and it's Silver Ranch in Bismarck, North Dakota. And I'm also a community activist. I've been appointed to 2 boards the Ada County Solid Waste Advisory Committee that was in the wake of Dynamis because they wanted to have more diversity and communication at the beginning of these issues before they get out. And then we find what fiscal problems, and we find procedural, and then of course environmental. So we need to have these things vetted by a variety of opinions at the very beginning. That will save time in the long run. So I really am concerned about the development of, that we've developed responsibly, that we balance the needs of our current residents as we welcome new people. I also I am a strong voice for underrepresented neighborhoods, and I really hope you stay so that I can present to you my amendment to the city code that we can be properly represented. And I'm concerned about the property taxes. So stand strong with me on November 4th and vote for Karen Damley.
And last, we have Patrick Bajent. Thank you.
Hi, I am Patrick Bajent. This is one of the first times anybody's introduced me and pronounced my name correctly. So.
I looked it up on the internet and, decided is it going to be the French or whatever version. Anyway, start his title, like Bajent or,
Right. I'll tell you later, afterwards, I'll tell you where that name came from. Believe it or not, it's Scots-Irish, but there's a funny story there. So I am Patrick Bajent. I grew up outside of Moscow, Idaho. Worked for the Forest Service for many years and kind of had a convoluted life story that took me out of Idaho to the Bay Area to go to law school, working on the coast in Seattle and San Francisco for a number of years, and then boomeranging, as they say, back to Idaho. There are so many things to say in this campaign, in this election season in Boise, in 2019 in Boise, far more than 3 minutes worth. A couple of things that I would like to leave you with are, number one, I look at Boise and I look at the issues that Boise has through 3 lenses. The first for me is conservation. I'm on the boards of a number of conservation organizations, and long-term sustainability, clean, healthy planet, doing the best we can with what we have here today so we can give it to someone else tomorrow is very important to me. The second that everybody talks about so much, especially right now, it's kind of 3 different words for one thing, right? It's growth or affordable housing or transportation or low wages sometimes. These are all this big nebulous issue that are ways I think that people in Boise are trying to express this sense that we all have that things are okay, but they might not work out well. Right? It's this looming sense of dread. And it's legitimate. We do have problems with growth, with affordable housing, with transportation. I believe many of them flow from our low wages. But these are the important things that I want to tackle. If I had 10 minutes, I'd tell you exactly what I want to do. But I hope you come up and talk to me after the meeting so I get a chance to do that. And then the third thing that comes up over and over, and I think is really important, is accountability. We hear this described in different ways, or transparency or inclusiveness. Accountability is the word that I use for it. I think people in our community really want to feel like their leadership is accountable to the interests that they have, to the wants and to the needs that they have. The conversations that we know are going on that involve a balancing of competing interests are done in a way that is accountable to what we care about. I see this map and I see a lot of problems, right? The biggest problem I see is that only half of our city on one side of the river votes. It's easy to point to people and say the problem with you is you're not voting, but that's not really right? The problem is that somehow the relationship between the city government and half of the city is not an accountable one. This is something I feel very strongly about and will work very hard on. I encourage you to think about all the candidates. I hope that I've earned your vote. If you have any questions for me, you can call my cell phone, you can walk up to me on the street, you can walk up to me after the meeting today. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I think we should give them all a big hand again. unless I'm forgetting anybody else out there, I don't think I am. What time is it anyway?
It is 7:52.
Okay, so, hopefully we can do the rest of our meeting in 40 minutes. And like we said, candidates, we know if you have to leave, that's no worry, but otherwise stick around. Neil, can we hit those lights again? We've been really busy, and you all know that. You know that we used, other meetings earlier last year. We would have 2 or 3 times this many people in the room, and we're starting to, our numbers are starting to thin. But we know there's a lot of people out there still interested in what we're doing. Who came to the open house for the plan last Thursday? I know some of you did. Yeah, so there's about this many people as well, and so somewhat a different group. So we're going to talk about briefly where we are on the plan. So we started about 18 months ago. We have a consultant who the city has paid $50,000. They've done essentially all they can do. They've run out of money because we're a tough area to plan. Not their fault. So now we're in the stages of trying to finalize it. We collected information from the neighborhood last Thursday based on kind of a summary view of it. And it's also, we're kind of in a tough place right now with the neighborhood plan too, because as we saw with the Prominence Project, you can have great language in Blueprint Boise. You can have all this language about saving open space, saving areas for urban agriculture, looking at your wildlife habitat and mapping that, assessing your history and your cultural assets. And all of these policies and guidelines, both in the larger Blueprint Boise and in the Northwest Planning Area, which were written specifically for the area essentially from 36th or so Street out to Eagle. We many times elaborated, enumerated these policies and how they should apply to how our area is developed. And I never heard back one of these policies repeated back to us as, yes, we need to assess your potential for urban agriculture before we take out 40 acres of the last USDA certified prime farmland north of the Boise River within the city limits. So right now we're in a difficult place because we're trying to finish up this neighborhood plan, and the plan is kind of give and take, right? We think, well, we know the city is interested in this transit-oriented development along State Street, which means focusing density, more growth on State Street because hopefully someday there will be rapid transit along there. But it also, if you look at federal standards for transit-oriented development, it says you focus your development there. You do this in order to protect and have variation, such as open space, farmland, rural character in other places of a neighborhood. So right now with the neighborhood plan, we kind of have to step back and look at it and realize that the city as it exists today will use the parts that say, go ahead and develop this area, but they may never repeat back the parts to us that says, let's protect, let's try to save, let's think of it holistically. And so frankly, at this point, we're going to kind of have to pause a little bit. We have new information now about how these things are used and judged. So that's where we are in that. It's an unfortunate place to be. We put one heck of a lot of time and effort into it, and we're going to keep it alive, but we're going to think carefully how we move forward. So, I think we should probably just, instead of pushing all the questions to the back, you guys have any questions about neighborhood plan, where we are in that process? Yeah?
Yeah, Rick, I still got one question. When I went and saw your plan before I left, I saw the plot plan, and I saw that spot where they want to put, give us that land for a park that's a swamp down that one corner, right?
Yeah.
So,
So just to stop you just for a second, just so we're on the same page, that is prominence that you are speaking of.
yeah, but what I'm saying is the thing that's, they still never answered the question. They're draining water into 3 places that go into the water habitats and for clean water. I haven't seen the city or the city council do one thing under that Clean Water Act that should be followed under. They stayed away from that. They're letting this guy build, 200 units? And that water is going to go into those areas. And that's a federal law. You can't be dumping parking lot water.
I think that is an excellent point, and I think it is something that we need to bring up, specifically to prominence though. So we will talk about that at the end. We're going to talk about, but I appreciate that comment. I think it is very appropriate. Yeah.
I just walked in, I just caught the tail end of that. Now,
We're not going to talk about that right now, Mike. We're moving that to the end.
Okay.
Yeah. We talked about this idea of the rural to urban transit-oriented development along State Street, pathways, connectivity, trying to assess our history. Good Ales North, part of the Oregon Trail, that's on the edge of the Prominence project, etc. So we could talk about that all night, but I just kind of want to move us forward, unless there's other questions specifically about the neighborhood plan and where we are in that. And then you'll hear more about it. We're not, we're like I said, we're kind of taking a little break on that. Yeah.
What's the next step for the neighborhood plan?
Well, so we have historical consultants, and they are looking at our area. They've already done a fair amount of research in this area in their own past research. The group is TAG, known as the Arrow Rock Group. We're trying to encourage them to actually do some new research. Go take some oral histories. There are still families here that have been here for 100 years or so, or close, and we feel there's a lot of new information that's not been collected already, so we hope it will be more than a summary of existing information. Yeah. Okay, moving forward. Oh, sorry. Treasury report. Jennifer.
All right, my name is Jennifer Sweck. I've been the treasurer for the last 2 years, and so here's our annual report. We have $1,954 in available funds. This is in combination from our yard sign sales and PayPal donations. So that's great. We also have $3,549 in our soil conservation grant monies that we applied for. And you might have noticed on the corner of the road to Siemens Gulch and the turnoff to Old Hill Road, it used to be, what is that, a swale, a drain ditch?
It's a storm basin.
A storm basin that's now planted with some native shrubs and lots of sunflowers and great things right now. So we're working on that. We were successful in renewing and getting $2,000 mini grant fund, which starts this month and will carry us through September of 2009. And those mini grant funds are used for projects that improve the neighborhood's safety, appearance, and resident engagement through projects, communications, and events, such as our National Night Out is something that we did this year, and it was quite successful. We also received an $84,000 grant for capital expenditures, monies for our Magnolia Park to build a shelter, a covered shelter area. Like Brent Cole said, that park was pretty incomplete when it became our park, so we're working on it. And my term's up after 2 years, so if anyone's interested in being a treasurer, I think we're having elections next.
Yeah, keep going.
All right, so do we need to have the board come up to talk about elections?
Yeah, I guess I won't totally put you on the spot. Yeah, so we have our board elections tonight. and then our officer elections. So what we're going to do first is either re-elect or elect new board members. We can have as many as 8, and we want to have 8. And then out of that, we will elect officers, president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. Now we have one board member who still is overlapping. She's offset years, Erica Schofield, who you all know and have seen. So she, if she's willing still, will try to run the elections. If we get Neil Park over there, who's our current secretary, to manage to turn on the lights.
Is the next slide up to support the election?
I'm not sure. Let's see. Elections, yes. So I guess we should probably all kind of, maybe not in 3 minutes, but maybe in 15 seconds, you know, say who we are. I guess we've tried to convince everybody who's on the board to continue running. Brock Cromwell, he says he's done his duty, which we appreciate. He's had enough, so he's not going to run again. That's it, right? The rest of us are all running still, right? Yes?
Well, we have to be nominated.
I know, but I'm just saying, let's go ahead and quickly give a little introduction as to who we are. Yeah, I think I'm up here, I talk enough. You all know who I am pretty much. Grew up here, moved away, like a lot of people, came back about 8 years ago, and with Karen dealt with a dynamis issue. Didn't want to be a hermit scientist. That's all I really want to do. But in the last year, haven't been able to run my computers because it's just too much work to deal with this stuff. I mean, frankly, our board members have put in way too much work. It's not sustainable. That's why we're trying to get you other people on board. But we also have to transition to some other way of interacting with the city. And we do that by voting. We do that by getting some respect, so we are part of the process early on. So it's not so much dang work to have to, raise our neighborhood up and fight. So anyway, that's me. Dennis, you want to say something quick about being vice president? I am now the president, yes. And if I could be again or not.
You'll be nominated by me to be president again, Richard. I'm Dennis Dunn. I'm the current vice president. And I'm here by virtue of the fact that I met this wonderful woman, my wife, in 1980. And she's a Boise girl, and so I'm here. We have been living here since 2008 full-time. I live in the Northwest neighborhood. My life has been compromised by this commitment, and I'm okay with that because I think it's important. And if you're interested in having me continue, I'm honored to do so. So that's me, Dennis Dunn.
Do you want to come up? Yeah, is Neil? Oh, we want to go in order? Okay. Neil.
I'm Neil Parker, and I'm a person of very few words, except when I'm writing. And sometimes I'm a person of way too many words. I think when people get my emails, they scan and see how many paragraphs they contain before they decide if they want to dive into them or not. Anyway, I've been on the board for almost 2 years now, and I've served as secretary for almost 2 years. Due to a health concern I learned about recently, I would like to step down as secretary. I'm willing to remain on the board if I wanted. I'd be happy to serve. We've accomplished an awful lot. We have a lot yet to do, especially due to our city council's recent defiance of planning and zoning's recommendation on prominence. We're still in that fight, and I'm proud of the people that I've had the privilege of working with. We've got a great board, and as Richard said, we would like to expand that. We always use more help, and we would like to add to our board and get some more energy added into it. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
everything. I've learned so much the last 2 years, and it's really inspiring to work with this team. As Neil said, we've accomplished a tremendous amount, but there's still a lot to do. So if anyone would like to be treasurer, let us know. If not, I'm happy to serve some more. Anyway, thanks for getting here tonight and supporting us through all this, and let's see what happens.
Is she in here? Maybe she might be in the hallway. Jennifer, maybe see if she's in the hallway.
Erica, why don't you go while we're waiting?
Well, I'm not up
Oh,
for
never
election
mind.
again.
Sorry.
Yes,
My bad.
I'll be going into my second year, but I'll go ahead and just say that everything everyone else has said, it's been great to work with everyone. We've all worked really, really hard. And it's wonderful because we have a real diverse range of views on things, but we are fighting for the same issues. And we do cooperate and work together really well. Karen's gonna come up.
We're, yeah.
And I'm gonna say something real quick. Most everyone so far on the board is on one part of the neighborhood, and I'm kind of the one on the outside edge over by Gary Lane. So it'd be nice to maybe spread us out a little bit more. I'm hoping some of you will step up and join us.
Yes. We like a diversity of thoughts at the board. So I've served on this board now for 2 years, and really appreciated representing you and speaking at all the hearings, and thankful for Dr. Llewellyn's leadership. So I would really be honored to continue to serve you and to try to really be a strong voice for this area. That's why I'm running for city council. It'd be much easier in my life not to. It's a matter of taking courage over comfort. It would be much more comfortable not to, but I think it's really important that we have a seat at the table and we produce a system of districting throughout the whole city, and I'll get more into that later, that we will continue to have a seat at the table at city council. So just really trying to deal with the systems of how city council makes decisions. So when prominence, something like prominence, comes to the table again, or maybe prominence, that we have a voice there. So thank you very much for having me serve you. I would love to continue to do that for the next 2 years. Unless I'm voted in.
Yes, and so now we can open the floor for additional nominations. You can nominate yourself, you can nominate someone else. Don't everyone jump at once.
What? Should I be my, sure. I'm not going to nominate myself, although I guess I can.
Robin Lockett is unable to be here. She is traveling. Hi, she's Robin Lockett and lived in Northwest Boise since 2012. Grew up in Boise, graduated from Boise High, then returned home after attending college out of state. My husband and I are proud to be raising our 2 young sons here and are grateful for the opportunities and amenities we enjoy in this area of town. Together with other neighbors, I've worked on behalf of our neighborhood to successfully write 2 grants, one to the Soil and Water Conservation District for funds to enhance the Hill Road Parkway, Siemens Gulch catchment area, and the other to City of Boise to get a covered shelter, which we saw in the grant for Magnolia Park, about $80,000. So she's also attended many meetings and testified before ACHD, Planning and Zoning, and the City Council to continue to ensure our neighborhood is well represented. And I would add, she has done so very well. And what you can't see is that there's a beautiful picture of her husband, and her 2 boys, and she would be honored to serve on the Northwest serve on the board of directors for the Northwest Neighborhood Association. Thank you for your consideration. And I would actually so nominate Robin. So I am nominating Robin Lockett.
So
I better just do one.
yeah. So we have one person nominated now. Great. Second. Great. Is Christina?
Position of board member. What we're first doing, we're doing board member. We're getting the board the group of 8.
Yes,
There we
we
go.
have 8 board member positions. We do that first. Those are 2-year terms. And then we have 4 officer positions, and we have to do that after we get the board established. Who else out there is wanting to join us? Great. Cool.
Wow. Just get back and throw a little something together if I need to. That's far as you go.
And so I'll stand right there. I like to stretch things. My name is Christina Hines. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Mountain Home. My mom and her entire family are ranching family from Mountain Home. So half of my life has been lived in Idaho, half has been in Illinois. And so now I've been back here for about a decade. My mom and I owned a 4-plex apartment building off of State and Pierce Park. So we understand the rental and the crisis that we have in the city, and we unloaded that building about 6 months ago, and I now have a house at Abe and Sloan, so I'm about a block away from where the Prominence development is. And as soon as I got into the neighborhood, I got really activated in going to the meetings. I testified at City Hall, at the zoning and planning meeting. I've been there till 1 a.m. And so I've just been really involved in it, and now I'd like to get a little bit more involved in any way that I can. So. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in math and science education. I was a teacher in middle school for 5 years, so I'm a little crazy, right? And now I work as a one-on-one behavioral modifier or assistant for children with disabilities. So hopefully I get nominated. Thanks, guys.
Yes. So we can go ahead and move with nominations, or anyone else who wants to step forward. Richard?
I'll nominate Christy Hines. Second.
And Neil, you're taking notes on this, correct? Okay. So we've got Robin nominated, we've got Christine nominated. We need others to nominate our existing board members so that we can move forward.
I nominate Richard.
Richard?
Second.
Second? I nominate Erica. You don't have to run again because we have 2-year terms. So I'm in the free zone right now. But thank you, Teresa.
Nominate Neil.
Okay, we have Neil nominated.
I'll second.
Second.
Has Jennifer been nominated?
Are you nominating Jennifer? Yes, Teresa's nominating Jennifer. Second.
I nominate Karen Dan.
Karen nominated.
Second.
A second.
So I can nominate Dennis.
Okay, Richard nominates Dennis. And a second. Okay, so that gives us our 7 positions. And now we have to vote on them each individually, right?
Let's just
We
do
do
a
it-
voice. Just do a voice vote. Yeah.
But each one individually, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, excuse me, so, are there any other nominations?
Yes. Anyone else? Okay, nominations are closed. And now we'll proceed with the vote. And I'll go in the order on the board here so that we can try to keep it simple. And I want to say thank you to Brock for the time he served. Thank you. Okay, so we'll do Karen Danley. Do we have yays? Yays. Any nays? Okay. Dennis Dunn? Yays. Any nays? All right, moving right along. Richard Llewellyn? Yays? Nays? Neil Parker? Yays. Nays? No. Jennifer Schweck? Yays? Any nays? All right, and then we have Robin Lockett. Yays? Any nays?
There's a drain ditch, those of us who grew up around here, or the Eagle Drain, and then flows directly back into the Boise River. So it's more of a way of getting around the regulatory problem than the actual physical problem, because much of the water does flow just directly back into the Boise River anyway. Boise will tell you, if you ask, that it is that their effluent is cleaner than the Boise River, and that kind of annoys me because it depends what you measure. The last 15 years or so of science in this bill has defined what are known as contaminants of emerging concern, pharmaceuticals, all these things up here. You can't really read this slide, but I'll just read off all of these. And the thing about these is they can affect life at very low levels. Antibiotics, disinfectants, fire retardants, industrial additives, lifestyle products, non-prescription drugs, other prescription drugs, personal care products, pesticides, plasticizers, reproductive hormones, solvents, and steroids. And if we go down the list, most of those are in wastewater effluents and are not removed by conventional treatment processes. We do a pretty good job now of removing the things that traditionally been the problem and have been traditionally been the pollutants that have caused trouble, causing nitrogen blooms, etc., so nitrogen, phosphorus, heavy metals. We're doing a pretty good job of that. But all of these compounds known as contaminants of emerging concern, they're not measured, they're not regulated, and because they're not measured or regulated, Boise can say their water is cleaner than the Boise River, but of course if you don't measure them, how can you say that? Likewise, the technology is not designed to remove these because they're not measured or regulated. So that's going to be an issue. Not going to take more of your time now, but we definitely need to make sure that a lot of our questions are answered moving forward. This affects our neighborhood especially, and Eagle, of course. The other thing, a new development down on State Street where the old silo is, the white silo, 9000 West State Street. We publicized a developer meeting. It looks like they would like to put 60 units there of multifamily. Right now, this is their tentative design where they have kind of the units stacked around the perimeter. They are just two-story. It's quite interesting what they propose right on State Street versus, out Long Hill Road. The people that we talked to, Sloan, Beck, and you may remember the third of the party, they are landscape architects. They also do these plats. They were very interesting to talk to. It was a very, very different situation than talking to the people who want to do prominence. They really were wanting our input. They said they could potentially move these units into different areas. And for those of you who live just west there, in the what's the development called? Duncan's Landing. Right now, those apartments would likely kind of look down on some residences, but they said they were amenable to reconfiguring the design. The weird thing, of course, is that this is is that getting out onto State Street without an without a light will be very bizarre. We were afraid at first that they might try to punch through into Duncan's Landing, but apparently they can't. And so, yeah, we'll see. It's preliminary. We don't know where it's going, but something we'll be monitoring. Yes, yeah.
So is that double line at the bottom